Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam, Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Good evening and welcome to Mente. Tonight's guest is Amaterasu Solar, or Amy. We're going to call her Amy. Amy is a multidisciplined foundational economist, social engineer, and layman physicist. Also studying psychology, emergence, fractals, stemmergy, chaos, complexity, the tipping point, and other elements of science. She has spent the bulk of her 50-plus years on this planet seeking solutions to the problems that beset humanity. Her father was deeply involved in the study of electrogravitics, teaching her, describing his successful experiments in gravity, control, and free energy, and painting a picture of flying cars, floating cities, and all the energy we can use as the world she grew up in because of his work. When the technology of electrogravitics became highly classified, her father never mentioned his work again. She strives to bring that people's perspective these days. I know you talk about it all the time. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I know I know how passionate you are about that.
Yes, indeed. My life is devoted to it.
Yeah, that's quite an intro. I didn't know any of that, really.
Well, now you do.
I know, it's awesome. So, tell us a little bit about the world you grew up in. What influenced you, symbols, obviously your father, and all that stuff that we just heard in your intro?
Well, I grew up in San Diego. Pretty typical childhood to some extent. My dad was an aerospace engineer, and as it was mentioned, he worked with T. Townsend Brown. I don't think that's mentioned in the thing, but he worked with T. Townsend Brown in electrogravitics, and he would always come home so excited up until the point that it went into black projects, and then he couldn't talk about it anymore. I might go into my encounters with the satanic. I don't know whether we want to get into that, but I did have
only if they're in your
background.
dreams.
Huh?
Only if they're related to your dreaming.
Well, I think they influenced it influenced my dreaming. I do know that I would wake up often as a child screaming from a nightmare. And
well, we'll get to the dissecting in a bit. I don't want to disrupt the flow here of the intro. So,
I went beyond the satanic stuff, which ended around the time I was about the age of 5, and had nothing to do with my immediate family. It was just a very normal childhood, relatively speaking, albeit I was always I was always the one they picked on in school, and I think it had something to do with the fact that I entered kindergarten not only knowing my ABCs but already reading small words. And the other students were kind of envious because the teacher kept having me help the other students. And it proceeded from there. I was kind of a loner in that nobody wanted to have anything to do with me. for a while. But when I hit my junior year in high school, I started making friends and the world looked better. And then I went off to college for a year. Well, it was technically a year and a half, but it was in trimesters, so it was one calendar year. And then I dropped out, got married, and got divorced, and went into banking and learned a lot about how the money in this universe functions. And, wound up eventually moving around, working for the state of Nevada. I lived in Las Vegas for a while. And then when I wound up getting a job out in 29 Palms at the military base, a civilian job for a contractor. We were making instructional software.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and got a lot of insight from that job. And then 9/11 happened, and it was just coincidental that the contract was up for renewal in September. And by the end of the month, even though it had looked really good before the 11th, they said, well, our priorities have changed and we're not renewing the contract. And I was out in the post 9/11 world with, I don't know if you recall, but there were no jobs to be had anywhere.
Yeah, it was crazy. So moving back a bit further, when you were younger, were you a nature child? Were you more into being inside or in the city?
Well, I liked to go camping a lot. I still do. But my home life was spent either at school or up in my room, mainly because my mom, who I never was really close to my mom, she decided that she didn't want to worry about me, so she wouldn't let me go over to anybody's house after school unless she knew the parents, and she would make zero effort to know anybody's parents. So I had to come home from school and I'd go up to my room and read, or, this was before computers. So I did a lot of reading up in my room and listening to music. And
I still love doing those things personally.
Well,
were you actually reading, or was that a euphemism?
No, I was actually reading. I started off reading. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dover reprint series of books.
Yes.
Classic.
Classic.
Well, they did the colored fairy books from 19th century England. Okay, and I read those avidly. I think I've read every single one of them several times through. And that's where I I learned how to spell reading those books, and then discovered that color is not spelt COULOR.
Oh dear.
I kept failing spelling tests, not because I had no clue, but because I learned the British way of spelling things. So
yes.
I had to readjust myself. But those books, if anyone's familiar with them, they're not fairy tales written for children. They're not like the Disney crap and all of that. They were written for an adult audience.
I loved all of the Dover stuff.
I never heard of those things.
Oh, yeah, very few people have actually, but
in the Midwest they were around. I think all my friends were familiar with Dover.
Yeah, the colored fairy books were just fascinating, and they were basically direct reprints of what they set down in the 19th century. And let me tell you, not only did I learn my spelling, but I learned a lot of syntax that people would look at me very weirdly when I'd use, because that's how they spoke back then. And again, I had to sort of relearn English.
Yes. Come back into the modern world you were in.
Yep. So
were you brought up with any religious stuff?
Actually, no. My parents were not religious, and we had no religion in the house. It wasn't like it was verboten. We would talk about this religion believes this, that religion believes that, but there was no we believe this. It was entirely left up to me to find my spiritual path.
I think that's such a gift from parents when it can be like that, especially academically, where you can talk about it.
Yep. I agree. I feel ever so blessed for not being pushed into any one direction.
Yes.
Because it's allowed me to look at all of the religious works on an equal footing.
Yeah, without baggage or rebellion or any of that.
Exactly. I could
and that way you're open.
Yep, absolutely.
What sign are you, Amy?
Aquarius.
Aquarian. Okay, so this is one of our fun questions. Have you done psychedelics?
Yes, I have.
You mind sharing a little of that with us?
Oh, not a problem. I did LSD about 4 times, and in fact, one time was in the several times were at science fiction conventions, and I was with George Clayton Johnson. I don't know if you know who he is, but he wrote Logan's Run.
Okay, so I know Logan's Run. I wouldn't know who the writer is.
George Clayton Johnson.
It's like the third time that Logan's Run has come up in the show.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Really. Yeah.
It's a repeated thing.
Pretty
Might be fourth, actually.
But this is interesting. So you're doing LSD at a convention with the writer of Logan's Run?
Yep.
Oh.
Wow. And I don't think he was doing it, but I was doing it, and I was in his presence, and it was quite an intriguing experience. I enjoyed watching the floor, which was sort of a paisley design, swirl on command. I'd look at it and think, swirl, and it would start swirling around.
That's awesome.
It was quite cool.
How old were you?
I think I did my first acid trip in my early 20s, and by the end of my 20s was the last one.
Yeah, same here. I didn't do it after my 20s.
And then I did psilocybin.
How was that?
Well, I wish I had had some sleep, but I had been up something like 46 hours by the time I did it. And I wound up just lying on the bed for a long period of time looking at a unicorn. And that was it. I mean, it wasn't even a whole unicorn. It was like
I don't even know what to say.
A unicorn looking through a window. There was a square, and it's just the head, and it was looking at me, and I was looking at it.
Oh, so it was like an entity looking back at you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We were just looking at each other. And then I also have done DMT, which was a very, it was unique. I hang on just a second.
No problem. Hello, anyone in the chat? I'm not over there, so.
Okay, I'm back. Anyway.
So DMT.
The DMT experience. I did DMT and just kind of fell backwards in the bed. And the next thing I know, I'm in this it's like kind of like a chapel, but everything is pulsing. and everything has, again, sort of a paisley design that's swirling around. I mean, the walls, the pillars, and then there was this fountain. There was also a stage over to the side, but I was fascinated by this fountain, which looked rather like a cervix,
Oh, interesting.
pointed upwards, with the water just flowing evenly all the way on all sides. And it looked alive, and I reached out and touched it, and it was like touching marble,
Oh, wow.
cold, but it still looked like it was alive, because it was, there was, everything was pulsating in the whole thing on a very subtle level.
So like everything was kind of living.
Yes. And for some reason, I had the distinct feeling I really wasn't supposed to be there. And if anybody caught me there, because I was all alone, if anyone caught me there, then it might be problematic. So I proceeded to look around, and I could hear some people in, like, down the corridor in another room, and I'm like, okay, this is not good. Where can I hide? And I went over to the stage area, sort of like an altar area, and started looking around. And then all of a sudden, I felt myself being pulled back into my body.
Oh, wow.
It just, and I remember when I was coming back, I, I had a daughter, who was at the time about 3 years old. And, she, I remember crying out as I was being pulled back, "Lily, where are you? Lily, Lily, where are you?" And then I was back in my body and realized where I was, and I knew she was in the next room, and I'm like, okay, I'm all good now.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that was the DMT trip.
So I want to touch on the Paisley thing. So you experienced that with LSD and the DMT. Was it kind of, so when you say Paisley design, I immediately think fractals.
Well, yeah, not so much fractally as actual paisley, like a paisley design that you'd see, where they were more or less uniform, but
Yeah.
sometimes some would be a little smaller and some would be a little bigger. It was more like that. That's how in the LSD trip, that's how the carpet was, but it was like a red carpet with blacks and whites and other
And you
miscellaneous.
had control in the LSD trip though with that. With the
Yes.
DMT, it was
It was pale. It was almost almost indetectable.
Oh,
But
okay.
it moved enough that I could make out what it was, and it was mainly in purples and light blues and pale greens and
It
pale
sounds
pink.
gorgeous.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and it was so peaceful there, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to be there.
So, and that was another quality I wanted to get to with this before we move on to the state of dreaming, is so there was this quality of beauty and magic and peaceful, but there's also this kind of a little bit of angst because you weren't supposed to be there. Was there any fear with that or just angst?
It, sort of angst. It wasn't even angst. It was more just a realization that I really shouldn't be there and I should try not to be discovered.
Okay.
I wasn't like worried about it, and I wasn't, in any way really fixated on it, just aware of it.
So with these experiences, before we get into like the quality of how you dream, have any of your dreams ever mirrored any of the feelings or the sensate stuff of the psychedelic?
Because although I dreamt a great deal as a child, somewhere in my 20s, around the time I started doing, did some LSD, I stopped being aware that I had dreamt. I mean, not remember the dreams, but not even being aware that I had been dreaming.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, but I have had a handful of dreams that have not, I've remembered them and remembered them very clearly. And I wouldn't put them in the same feel as the psychedelics. With the psychedelics, I always felt that I had some degree of control. Whereas in most of the dreams, I was more a subject to, as opposed to a creator of, if you understand.
Yes, and well, but then that can be drilled down into like out of body experiences and lucid dreams and all that.
Yes, I have had some occasions where I have realized I was dreaming in a dream, and immediately I start cresting consciousness, and every single time it's like, no, let me please let me oh darn.
I know that does happen
every single time. And it's only been about, I'd say 5-6 times in my life that's ever happened to me. But I will say that the dreams that I have tend to have, how do I want to say this? I'll think of how I want to say it, I'm sure, as we go on.
So let's come back to the kind of the beginning of the dream stuff then. So give us an idea of generally how you dream. The general idea, like the quality of the dream, black and white, color, sounds.
Oh,
your
definitely
dream world.
Color, sound, depth, things do tend to shift. Like I might be walking along and then suddenly discover, oh, I'm flying or something on that order. There's a lot of weird shifts like that, but I can hear things, I can feel things. I don't know whether I can taste things because I don't recall a dream where I tried to eat anything. I did have one dream where I refused to eat something, though.
Do you remember that dream?
Not in detail. I just remember the little bit where I went, no, I'm not eating it. Whatever it was.
Well, that's an act of will.
How positive are you that was a dream?
Oh, I would give it a 99.999998% probability it was a dream.
I only ask that because I've heard of there's many stories out there about certain entities who do offer food to people as a trap, as a contractual thing.
Oh yes.
Well, I'm not going to say that there wasn't something in the dream that was doing that, but it was a dream in the sense that I was in that realm,
that state, that conscious state. I get it.
Yes, as opposed to being consciously awake.
Sure, it still could have been something else.
It could have been. It could very well been. And in fact, I don't know if we want to go into my most recently remembered dream, which
yes, please,
very interesting. But I was at this really beautiful little place that had like a garden and everything, and for some reason, I don't remember why, I was going to be staying the night, and I was given this room that was sort of up this set of stairs, and then it had like a window that opened out, looked out over the garden, but there were no curtains. And it was like, I really didn't want to do things like get undressed for bed, that sort of thing, with these windows wide open. So I'm busy trying to find something to cover the windows with, and I see this person. I'm not sure if I really knew who this person was. Maybe it was the person whose place it was that I was staying. I'm not really sure. But I see them down in the garden. And then I know that they're coming up the stairs. And they came into my room, this guy, and he looks at me. And I realized that he was not up to any kind of good. And he came up to me and he kept he put his arms like bear hug around me with my arms pressed to my side. And I'm sure we had some conversation, but I don't recall what it was. I just remember that I went, "Let me go." And I woke up, and the first, last, and only time in my life I had an experience at that point that I can't explain it, but I opened my eyes, and crawling on the ground was like, when ants find like food and there's gazillions of them running along in lines to the food. Well, that's what it looked like, running on and off my bed. And I've never seen anything that wasn't there before, ever in my life. And I'm looking at those ants going, "What is that? What's causing that?" And I sat up and they vanished.
Wow. When was this? This was recent?
Yeah, about 3 months ago.
Oh my, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it just kind of blew me totally out of the water.
Was there, so just to look at this for a minute, was there anything particularly dramatic going on in your life at that time? Anything out of the normal?
No, I mean, well, right now my life is pretty dramatic. I've been trying to get stability for over a decade now and have lost everything and am just destitute and technically homeless. And I'm blessed to have friends that let me stay at their place and use their Wi-Fi. But no, but it had been pretty much even Steven. But I do know that I've been doing this work, and I the more I do it, the more I am certain they don't like my work. And if that tells me I'm on the right path. And I think from what others have said about that particular experience, that they said it sounded very much like a psychic attack.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to kind of get maybe like take away the factors from your take away some factors, so the deductive method, right?
Right.
And so that's why if there was anything that was outside of your life being a little bit dramatic right now, anything that might have been standing out above that would come in and create this kind of drama in your unconscious.
It might have had something to do with that first video on the playlist of mine on YouTube,
which I will be getting to tomorrow.
Yes, it might have something to do with that, because it was around that time when I produced that video.
Well, what astounds me is when you wake up and you had that experience where you saw them and then they weren't there. So you had this lingering.
Yes, and
liminal.
Like I have never ever had that before that point. I mean, once I was awake, everything was just normal. I never saw anything that shouldn't have been seen.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
After you published that video, were you concerned that you'd get a bad reaction to it? Or get retaliated against or whatever? I mean, what kind of
I always presume that sooner or later they're going to do that, but I don't worry about it. I don't have any fear. I gave up fear when I started walking down this must through trust and deceit. and that we can create a very beautiful society. And I know that the people in control here, the psychopaths, whatever they may be, you can pick any kind of ideological or
it's trying to continue its control as it as it has
Yep.
been, but the veil is getting very thin. But this is a subject for another issue.
Yes. Yep.
So let's get into, have you been able to read glyphs or numbers, books, writing at all in dreams?
Not that I can recall, although my dreams are usually social interaction-y as opposed to looking at the specific things around me.
Are you?
I see them, I'm aware of them, but they're usually architecture that I'm aware of.
Are you, or have you ever been a member of the secret space program?
Well, this is an interesting fact. Okay, I have a memory from when I was about 3 years old. Now, understand, my memories, people often tell me, you can't remember things that far back.
Yes, you can. I do.
My first memory was about a year old. I had just learned how to walk. And I finally got the chance to go up and pet a cat. And I reached out my hand to pet the cat. And I was aiming for its tail end, and I was going to swoop my hand up the back of the cat. And just before I got my hand to the end of that tail, my great aunt, whose house we were at, took my hand and said, "No, no," as she moved it over to the cat's head and made my hand stroke down the back of the cat. She says, "Always pet the way the fur grows." And I never forgot that. Ever.
That's a real pearl of wisdom.
Oh,
yes.
Speaking of cats,
the cat here just got on the piano.
My cats actually like it both ways.
Yeah,
I've never had a cat that didn't like to be scratched like a dog.
Yep. I've got a kitten here that's creating kitty problems, which is expected of kitties.
Oh, yes.
She's
so
go ahead.
So in the interactions with others in dreams, have you come across a quality that felt like it wasn't just a dream, an aspect of your personality, that it was pushing back an entity, I guess, another person dreaming, something that wasn't your content?
Well, not really, except for, I've had the feeling that there were beings in my dreams that perhaps were not. I don't think that they were like other people, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
They weren't just like me and my friend Aaron. We'll bring him into this, are dreaming the same dream together. It's never been like that. But I did have one dream where I wound up wanting to get back to my home, and I was out on this road, and this very gross dude, for some reason, he and a whole bunch of others were coming at me. And this is possibly another psychic attack dream, but he had me, in order for me to get back to my family, who I really wanted to get back to, my daughter, my ex at the time. He wasn't my ex. And he had me perform a sexual act upon him with my mouth. And it was really gross because he was like all pussy and so oozy sores, and I mean, it was really gross.
Oh,
it was
geez.
really
That is
gross.
terrible.
And I didn't in the dream get as far as getting home, because it was about that time that I was doing that I woke up. And it was really weird because I had that taste in my mouth for 3 days.
Okay, so that came from that dream. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And this is stuff I've been wanting to collate deeper with other people's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Do so how old were you around that? Do you remember?
Let's see. Probably in my 50s somewhere.
Okay.
You know, I was 46 when I gave birth to my daughter, and she was legally kidnapped from me at the age of 4.5. So
Ugh, terrible.
yeah, she'll be I guess, well, she was born in 83, so not 83, 2003. Oh, I'm away. 2003.
Time, it's an illusion.
It is. She was born in 2003 in January, 12 days before my birthday, and unfortunately she's Capricorn. I was hoping I'd have another Aquarian in my life, but no such luck. Anyway, so
around that period.
I mean, she's getting in her mid-teens by this point.
Okay. That's intense, that stuck with you for 3 days afterwards.
Yeah.
Were you able to, so how did you reconcile this experience in the end?
Well, I don't know. What do you mean by reconcile? I just went, that's weird.
Right. That's, I mean, by mentally putting, like, so you have this intense dream,
Yeah.
and it's, it seems like it's a being or something other. It's not part of your dream content. And then you come back from that state of consciousness and it sticks with you for days. That's, that's rather profound.
Yeah. Just the flavor, the taste. It was just kind of disgusting. And I don't know. I guess because I have a tendency to just accept things as I find them, in a sense. I just kept thinking that's really, really weird. And that was basically it. I don't know that it emotionally impacted me in any way particularly, except that I remembered the dream, which, like I said, for me, ever since I was in my early 20s, is unusual.
Yes. Well, it does kind of sound like, archontic in a way, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And I think everyone's familiar with that.
Yep.
Do you feel like you've had downloaded information ever?
I'm not sure how I would tell the difference between downloading information and just having a skill of putting data together.
Okay, so like you've been in that altered state of dream, and you wake up and you feel like you've either learned something or you have to go on a task. You've brought something back intellectually that needs to.
I see what you're asking.
Yeah.
Not really. Most of my dreams have been, I wake up and go, depending on the dream, and as a child, most of them were, oh, thank God that's over. It's not real. Oh my God. It's not real. Oh, what a relief.
I just had one of those the other night.
But, no, I have never felt that I've been given something that I needed to bring forward through the dream state.
What about have you ever received this feedback that you sleepwalk or sleep talk?
Nope.
Okay.
Never.
And then let's get into, I'd like to get into maybe a couple more of your actual dreams, but then I want to get into the woo-woo of it. I can't even believe I lost my train of thought there.
Oh, we do that.
I know. Oh, that's terrible. I can't. Oh, no. Okay, here. So, deja vu. Do you experience them? What are they like for you? And are they comparable to other? Are you able to locate why you're having it?
Okay. I have had deja vu. I would say it's a rarity in my life. And when it's happened, it's again just like, ooh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
no, I've never really felt that it was for any kind of reason. You know, it was just okay. That's weird, and I go on. Like I said,
So they're just like an anomaly. You let it go. I'm
Yep.
so intrigued by them. I try to push into them. So with that was deja vu, and then, oh my God, I can't believe me.
I don't know where you were going with it. Sorry.
I know it's twice. I have this cat that's terrorizing me on the side here. It's terrible. She got on the piano. I had to kick her off.
Blame it on the cat.
So on this thread here, so anything comparable to actually leaving your body or astral projection?
Not in the dream state per se, but I have done that once when
Can you share that?
When I was about somewhere between 4 and 5 years old. I was being molested by the man who would take me to satanic rituals.
Oh my.
I will not call him my uncle because he was a man that my aunt, my mother's sister, married. And he is not my uncle. I don't consider anybody that would do such things in any way in my family. But yeah, he was abusing me, and all of a sudden I was looking at everything through his eyes. And I think from that experience is how I got my understanding, or at least the ability to put myself into the position of a psychopath, and how I can accept what other people say, oh, that's crazy, no one would ever do that. And I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, they could, if they're a psychopath.
Right.
So
from where they stand, yes.
So at any rate, yeah, that's the only time that I ever had an out of body experience.
So you were actually kind of inhabiting his body and experiencing or looking from behind his eyes, essentially.
Well, it was like I was him.
Yeah, that's what. And so I guess I'm curious about this. So were you able, how did it happen? Was it just instant? Were you just suddenly him?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was so freaked out about, well, let's put it this way, it was painful, whatever he was doing. And he had me straddled and trying to insert him into me, and it was very painful.
Could it have been actually a dissociation and you just kind of floated up behind where he was?
No, I was definitely looking through his eyes and thinking I could see his thoughts. And that's why I say that's how I think I got the ability to understand the thought processes of the psychopaths, because this man was definitely a psychopath. So, yeah, that he was an interesting character.
When you left, so then when you disengaged, was this after the abuse had happened? Was it?
Yes.
So was it the whole time? And were you experiencing the abuse as it was happening, or were you? So you're experiencing it through him.
Yeah. Once I was out of my body, I was not experiencing what my body was experiencing, but I was witnessing what was being done to it. through his eyes.
That's intense. That's and so then, okay, and just to push further through this, when you come back into your body out of this experience, what did you think about, like, so you're a kid now at this point, how did you process that experience of
that I basically didn't think about it.
you just pushed it away?
Yep.
Yeah,
And in
which is
fact,
a natural response.
a lot of the memories of the abuse and such that I went through as a child was pretty well buried for quite some time, although I had little snippets here and there of a number of things that I couldn't explain, like where did that memory come from? And it, when my grandmother died, I started remembering being sexually abused by the man. And it was at one point, and this was after my father passed, that I read a bit of, I've always, for some reason, I was always interested in finding out what I could about Satanism. Well, I understand now why, but at the time I didn't know why I was so fascinated by it. And so I'd read everything I could get my hands on about it. And I hit this paragraph in one of these things I was reading that said that Satanists sometimes will select one of the members' children for the sacrifice and not tell them. And all of a sudden, the first thing that happened was I heard this absolutely gut-wrenching scream. I mean, and I suddenly saw I was no longer, sitting there reading. I was in this moment, and I was dressed in a robe, and there's this woman, she had blonde hair, and she's screaming, and I'm looking over, realizing I had been daydreaming and not paying attention to what was going on. And I look up and I see my friend, who I knew through, I knew her through these rituals. We met each other at a number of other ones. And she's on this table, her mask lifted, but I've got this nasty mask on that I'm trying to see things through. And all of a sudden, I hear a knocking on the door in this warehouse that we're in, and get the kids out of here, get the kids out of here, quick, just get them out of here. And me and a bunch of other kids that had been standing sort of together on one side of this circle, and they were rushed out, and they said, quick, get dressed, get out of your robe, take the mask, get into your clothes. And I'm being rushed, and I keep asking about my friend. What's going on? Is she okay? What's up? That sort of thing. And this woman is going, come on, we just got to get out of here. And I got my clothes on, started to put my shoes on, and she's like, no, forget your shoes, you can put them on in the car, come on. And she's dragging me out. And all this while, I'm going up the stairs, my feet are getting poked by all the, there was broken glass and stuff, because I remembered more of it to know that I was in this warehouse in downtown, on the harbor in downtown San Diego. And we go up these stairs to the street level, and she pulls me into the car, as I'm trying to get my shoes on. I'm saying, she shows me in the car, there's this fat man that's already sitting there in the back seat. She shows me next to him. She gets in So I'm squished between this fat man and this woman, and there's a man driving and a man in the front seat. And, come on, let's get out of here. And I'm saying, what about my friend? What's going on? What about my friend? What about my friend? And the man in the front whips his head around finally and says, she's dead. And I just, I went in, I lost it. I started sobbing and, just totally, I can't handle this. And the woman next to me leans over to him and hisses at him, why did you tell her? And he said, she has to know.
Oh my goodness.
And, there's more to the story, because once I got to that point, suddenly I went backwards in my memory and how I got there and the whole 9 yards. So I know what
you start
happened.
trying to investigate how that happened. Did any of this stuff push through in the form of nightmares through your life?
Well, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the nightmares that I had as a child came from those experiences, and from the fact that when I was around that time, I had gone blind. I had an infection on my optic nerve that caused the tissues around the optic nerve to swell up, and I'd lost all frontal vision. And in order to find out exactly what was going to have to happen, what was going on, they had to give me a spinal tap. Now,
oh my God.
I'm led to believe that spinal taps these days are a piece of cake compared to what they were back then.
They're not. They're the same, and they're still nasty.
All I know is that, this was done in the doctor's office, and they had me curl up in the ball, held my head between my knees, held me still, and jabbed a needle in my back.
Oh.
And I used to wake up from nightmares of somebody trying to stab me in the back with a rat-tailed comb or a pencil, or
right. That's a direct relation.
Pick a pointed object, because I got to see the needle before they put it in me.
Yeah, they're huge.
And for a 4-year-old, you, even with just peripheral vision, you could still tell that it looked like it was 3 feet long. I'm sure it wasn't really quite that big.
They are rather big. I watched my aunt have one, and they're big.
I know they're big, but I don't think they're 3 feet.
No, but still, that's
to me, that's how big they were. So, but when I was about 12, I suddenly made the connection between the nightmares and the spinal tap, and from that moment on, I never had another one of those nightmares ever.
That's amazing. And that's like that recognition of the symbol and then placing it into your life.
Yeah.
So it's like you became free of that. Mm-hmm. It's like a key. You unlocked it, the riddle of it.
Yep.
That's great. Wow, Amy, I can't believe you left me speechless in this interview a few times in this chat. I want to get to a little bit of the woo.
All right.
I want to. So, what do you think about these different states of consciousness? So, what are dreams? What do you think dreaming is? What is its function? What is it? Is it tangible in any real way?
I've never been able to answer that question to my satisfaction. And long ago, I went, well, it is what it is. And that's where I've left it pretty much all my life. I really don't know. It may be that these dreams have some relation to some reality. And certainly in some senses they do, in that they were related to the reality of my spinal tap. And like I said, I think that they are used as an avenue for psychic attack, mm-hmm. based on the two particular the first one, by the way, where I had to do the sexual act.
That one was before the ants. Oh yeah, the ants was more recent.
Yeah, the ants was very recent.
Yeah.
But the other one happened right about the time I first started putting out the abundance paradigm material on abovetopsecret.com, which of course, if you know anything, and I didn't at the time know this, it's a CIA operation.
Yeah.
So, what isn't these days?
I know.
That's
seriously.
true. Really.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, they banned me at ATS. I'm proud of that.
Wear that proud, girl. Wear it proud.
Absolutely.
So it I guess when I ask about dreams, I'm always coming from this same stance. I hate to say it every show too. It's like, but for me, as soon as the day's over and it's into the realm of memory, it's no more tangible to me than the dream I had yesterday. And sometimes the dreams I had last night or 2 nights ago or 10 years ago are way more vivid and have stuck with me than any of the mundane stuff that goes on in my waking life. So I just wonder, like, is there a perspective there? Is there a bridge between these bits of our life, our dream life, memory, thoughts of the future, anything but now, where is kind of the center dot in the circle?
Right. Well, I certainly know that there have been dreams, like one dream that I had that was a remembered dream past the early 20s, was I dreamt that I was with my girlfriend and we met up with her son, and I had always at that time I was single, and I had always been rather attracted to her son. And it was a very pleasant dream because I wound up in her son's arms and she was encouraging me. And
girl, was this a cougar situation?
Well, yeah, it was.
Wow.
I was in my late 40s, I guess, and he was in his 20s. And
oh yeah, this is a cougar situation.
Fine looking young man, let me tell you.
Oh yes.
And sweet. I mean, just the sweetest kid. I tell you, I really, really liked him. But I never really pursued that, and thrilled at the thought of a middle-aged woman.
I love that though, in the dream. Have you had any dreams that were some people call it dreaming true, but were prophetic, where they came to pass?
Not that I'm aware of, and I keep hoping.
Yes.
If I've had those dreams, I don't remember them. Which hardly, it sort of defeats the purpose, right? You think?
Well, I don't know. Not necessarily.
I will say this. I've certainly had a feeling all my life that there was something very important that I was going to do. And, most of my life, I kept looking at that feeling going, but what? Here, there was a teller, what fantastic thing am I going to be doing as a teller,
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved on to various other jobs and just kept asking that question. And, it was when all of my research, because see, I started the one big perhaps difference, I don't know, maybe many other people go through this in their childhood, but I always felt something wasn't right. There was something wrong.
Yes.
You know, I'd look at all this money they were collecting in taxes, and then
Yes.
looking at them saying, we don't have enough money to pay to take care of these poor people. And I'm
Yes.
like, why? Why? And then, of course, you learn, well, first of all, over 50% of the budget. Well, these days
Yeah, you start
it was
learning all
less
that.
back then, but a huge chunk is going to kill people or figuring out ways to threaten people with death, or, you know, or
Right. Well,
paying
I call it,
nothing
it's like when you start seeing that we are kind of really, really slaves, you know, I mean, and
yes,
created by the monetary system.
yes,
And so that's a process to get to. Some people
yeah.
don't ever get there.
No, they, you know, they have been indoctrinated into the idea that working hard is a virtue. You know, so what if you get paid peanuts and your life is sucky while the guy you're enriching is sitting there sipping wine on the Riviera, you know? It's like,
Yeah, or even something as simple as saying I want to opt out and just go it on my own. The hand of Big Brother's not going to let you do that. There's nowhere to go except for to jail. And
well,
yeah.
the thing is, there is a solution, but enough of us have to do it.
Well, that, yes, I agree. I'm with you on that. See, I'm with you on a lot of this. I feel like
Awesome.
it's been a bone of contention of mine for a very long time. But I also want to keep that this is a dream show.
Yeah.
As well.
Yep.
So I think I have one other thing before we go to questions. What do you, and of course this whole show is really, it's more about states of consciousness. What are your thoughts on death? What is, in your opinion, I know, and this is the great thing about it, it's we all have a shot at trying to understand it, and there's really no tangibility to it, so the table's open.
Well, as far as death is concerned, you know, I do not fear death. In fact, there have been times that I've thought I was going to die, and it's always been it's been fun.
Yeah.
Onwards and forwards. I had a spiritual experience about, it's probably getting on towards 6-7 years ago now. I'm not really sure exactly how long ago it was, but I was doing something normal every day. I don't remember what it was. Everybody's like, you don't remember what you were doing? No, I don't. I have no clue what I was doing. But suddenly I was everything. And I mean the infinite universe in 3 dimensions, the infinite amount of time in all directions, the every subatomic particle, every person, every being, every critter, every rock, every planet, every sun, everything. And at the same time, simultaneously, I had no time, no dimension. It was like, I don't know. There's really no way to describe it fully in words.
It reminds me of a line from the wonderful, pretty much kind of autobiography of a breakdown from Herman Hesse called Steppenwolf, where one of the characters in the Magic Theater, the mind says, there's only enough time in eternity for a joke. And which is the whole sentiment. There's no time and lots of time at the same time.
Yes. It was no time, no space, no dimension, all time, all space, all dimension. Just all simultaneous. And it was
Had
like,
you not experienced something like that with DMT or psilocybin? Really?
No,
Because
nothing like that.
That's typical. Like if you take a heroic dose of shrooms, you'll go into what they call ego death, and that's what it's described.
Huh. Well, all I know is that it was like I was everybody and everything, you know. It was profound. We'll use that word because I guess that's probably the best word to describe it. It was profound. And, you know, I was considering, you know, a lot of people say, well, if you were everybody, who am I? What am I thinking? You know, that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, you don't quite get it, because although you know, using coming back isn't really the right term, because it was more that I expanded, contracted.
Mm-hmm. I like
was
that
still,
imagery.
I
Yeah.
was still me,
Yeah.
but I was everybody else too.
Yeah.
And when I unexpanded, contracted, it wasn't like I could bring details back. But I did bring awareness back, and what I came back with was that consciousness is God. All things are consciousness at some level of awareness. Consciousness creates the now. Now is the only thing that's real. Somebody said that before me. And we therefore are co-gods, co-creating the now.
Mm.
Who
And
said that before you?
Well, who said now is the only thing that's real?
Yeah.
It's attributed to Charles Manson. However, if you watch the tape of him saying that, he's saying something else, and somebody's dubbed the words that are attributed to him over his ranting. So
he's dead now.
Who knows who it was really? Some people say it sounds kind of like George W. But
oh dear, oh Lord!
I think they're played by the same actor, George.
It could be. You know, I'm very convinced that all the world is literally a stage.
Totally.
And that the men and the women that
they switch places sometimes.
That Francis Bacon, as Shakespeare, wrote about were not the audience, you and me. The men and women are the people who are playing multiple roles. And
it's our dream of life.
Well,
which is a role, which is a stage. It's always felt like a big drama to me, like a chess game in a way.
Well,
or theater.
My life has never felt like that, but when I look out into the media, it's like I'm watching a stage play. My life is very real to me, but what they put on that propaganda box, and you know, in the newspapers, put news in quotes, I look at it and I can see how somebody scripted it. It's a script, and these people are actors, and they're playing out their play for us, the audience. And right now they're writing the play to World War III. Very clearly.
Nah.
Yeah, right.
They just want you to think that nothing's going to happen.
Well, I don't know. Albert Pike called for that Third World War.
And we shall see. I mean,
they seem to think he's pretty much the bee's knees, given that he's the only Confederate with a statue in Washington.
But Trump's not a Mason.
I don't know whether he's
pretty much looking like a Jesuit at this point. But
well, the thing is, he doesn't have to be a Mason. He can be any one of the names that they come up with to apply to the psychopaths in control. That's why I don't use those, you know, he's a Jew. No, he's a Jesuit. No, he's a Mason. No, he's a Nazi. No, he's a Satanist. No, I don't care. Any of that.
It's a blue avian.
Psychopath.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
The titles.
I got questions. When you're ready.
Go for it.
All right. So let's see. Darcy Hello, Darcy. How are you?
Hi, Darcy.
Darcy has asked, were your parents in the military or esteemed in community, university, or laboratory?
My mother was the daughter of a building contractor. He did mainly roofing. My father's parents were professors of mathematics in Illinois. I can't recall offhand what university they were at, but they were teachers. And he was an electrical engineer graduating out of Caltech with his master's. He did not go for a PhD, and then went to work right away for Convair and spent his whole career at that company, meeting up with T. Townsend Brown. And, I know he went out to NASA fairly often, and he did have like a short stint in the Army very early on in his life before he graduated from college and that sort of thing. So, no, not really. Although, there were some connections
Yeah, I would say
in the family.
Convair is, they got bought by General Dynamics back in the 50s, and their General Dynamics, I think, got absorbed by Lockheed Martin, if I remember correctly, or Grumman, one of the two.
I think they're still around.
Are they really? Okay. Anyway, they're defense contractors.
Yep.
So Dad saw cool shit, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's definitely some connection close to all of that, but I wouldn't say that they were immediately in that. My mom wound up a housewife, so
Yes, you're right. I'm wrong. There are still solo.
Yep.
Interesting. Yes. They always remind me of Massive Dynamics from Fringe.
I know. Yes. Totally.
All right. Let's see. Greatest Potential, welcome, has a question. Any science fiction books stand out for you that you would recommend?
Oh my gosh. Well, I highly recommend Stranger in a Strange Land, the edition that came out a few years back, where Heinlein's wife took the original manuscript that Robert had written and published that, as opposed to when he brought the manuscript to the publisher, they said, hack about a third of this off. It's too long. Get rid of it. So he bashed it down, and that's what was published originally. The full manuscript, which he saved, fortunately, and his wife published, is vastly better. Let's see. Of course, I liked Dune.
Oh yeah, I love Stranger.
Who doesn't?
Too. Yeah, Dune is so classic.
Yes. And let's see.
Dune is probably the one book that is a real good reflection of today's oligarchies.
Yes. Well, I think it tells a lot of truth.
Yeah.
I enjoyed virtually everything I read by Asimov. I don't have a whole lot of data on more recent authors, mainly because I haven't had the time nor the money to keep up with science fiction novels that are recent. I liked Harlan Ellison. I liked Niven and Purnell. By the way, I almost got to take Jerry Purnell for a motorcycle ride.
Wow.
Well, I used to ride a motorcycle, and
that adds to your awesome factor.
One of the first books I ever read by them was Lucifer's Hammer.
Yes, that's a good book.
It is a really good book.
I liked Mote and God's Eye.
Yep, that was a good one too.
That was a good one. Anyway, let's see. Oh, I'm sure that when we're done here, all kinds of titles will pop into my head, and I'll go, "Oh, I should have said, and I should have said, and I
Well,
should have said."
just go ahead and put them in the comments later, and I'm sure everyone can come back.
Well, if I remember soon enough, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh, in the comments on the vid. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can do
yeah.
that. Okay, got it. I was thinking in the chat.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Darcy's at it again with this question. Who did you first find or hear that gave you hope to start researching?
I'm not sure I'm understanding that question fully.
Like, what led you down this path?
Oh, well, it was the awareness that we had the ability to draw energy from the ether through electrogravitics.
Yes.
The awareness that there was something wrong in the world. The education I got in economics through working in the banking system, and self-education in that, and the key was when I read Entropy by Jeremy Rifkin, and it suddenly clicked on me that all we're doing with money is accounting for our human energy added into a system that accounts for our human energy added. And I'm like, oh, let me see, free energy, human energy. If we add free energy, that makes accounting for human energy, especially with robots now, much like accounting for grains of sand, kind of pointless.
Yeah.
And
it was always pointless.
But I've been on this path my whole life. I will say that right now, because it took me many years to try to figure out why things weren't right. Why they were so wrong.
It's hard to find out.
Yes, you've got to get past an awful lot of indoctrination.
Yes. Oh man,
definitely.
it's a labyrinth
of indoctrination.
It's definitely a labyrinth.
I think the thing that has been to my greatest advantage was what my father taught me. I loved my father tremendously. He helped me greatly. But what he taught me was, he said to me fairly early on in my life, never believe anything. Ever, ever, ever. Give probabilities to things you hear and adjust them as you get new data.
I think that's powerful. My mother gave that, not in those words, but basically that same message to me as well. And what a gift your father was.
I'm very blessed to have had him as my father. And what it has allowed me to do is never become fully emotionally attached to any idea.
Yeah.
Because I've only given it a probability. I haven't said, oh, I believe that. That must be true. I've always kept that, well, there is some small probability it isn't. And
conviction is a weird thing, isn't it? It's like a trap.
Yes. And
well, it's filtered, but it's like sunglasses that get attached to your eyes.
Yeah,
everything you see is filtered by this new belief. Like, oh.
Yep. Well, one of the other things that he added to that was to when evaluating the new data, ask yourself, does that explain what I see?
Yes.
And then give that higher probability if it explains what you see than if it doesn't explain what you see.
See, well, this is already, you come into the world and a parent, or someone that's there helping you as a person that's young in your vessel, is saying, question reality, question things around you. This already puts you at the disadvantage when you get into like the school system and into these systems, right? It did for me, at
Yes.
least. The questioning thing was terrible for me at school. Terrible.
Yes. I
Oh,
know that I was just bored to tears at school. I
me
mean,
too.
just bored to
Terrible.
tears. And
I was too. I got sent to a psychologist all the time because they thought I was retarded.
me too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well,
Good
they
times.
they sent me to a psychologist to find out why somebody as bright as I was getting C's and D's.
It's called boredom.
It's called I
And
don't care.
yeah, but it's still that level of engagement. Well, they're making you're going
Oh,
through this process of regurgitation, which is just
yes.
terrible.
Exactly. It's like I've decided that the best way to teach our children is to get them over the basics hump, the reading and writing and
Right.
arithmetic, and
Right.
then let them loose on the web with supervision to pursue what they find interesting. Because I'm going to tell you something, when you are studying something you're interested in, you learn it just orders of magnitude better than when you're trying to poke shit you don't care about. Excuse my French.
Well, but look at how that actually leads to other avenues. So you're interested in this, and you get to a place where you're like, well, this ties into this that I'm interested in, and it turns into like a synapses in your brain where it's got all these magnetic lines coming from somewhere, the eternal rabbit holes of interest.
Yep. Well, I do know that I didn't really start learning anything until the web. And oh my gosh, suddenly I could look up anything that interested me. And I'm like, oh, awesome.
Yeah. I'm a lover of the web as well.
It's
but I'm a spider.
as long as it's a free web.
Yeah, of course.
And
Absolutely.
of course, you have to use your discernment. Gee, that might not really be true. Does it explain what I see?
Right. Well, you go back to that basic principle, right? Question and stay
Yep.
open.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Wow.
I'm looking through now too.
Did I miss one?
Did you get this one from Darcy? Who was in her family?
Oh,
she
no.
felt safe.
Who in your family do you feel saved you or loved you most?
Oh, my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is so obvious.
My dad. My mom just, she treated me like a problem child. And I think maybe I understand kind of why. I do know that when I was an infant, as my mother put it, wasn't quite true, but she'd say, when you came out of the womb, the doctor slapped you on the butt, you started crying, and you haven't stopped since. But I did. I cried.
Geez.
I cried just constantly as an infant to the point where I herniated my belly button.
Oh my God. Amy, jeez.
Oh, I was not happy to arrive here, apparently. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I stayed late. I stayed in the womb as long as I could.
Oh, well, I seemed to come out about as expected, but I did. I cried and I cried and I cried to the point where they put both me and my father on phenobarbital because he couldn't take it. I mean, it was seriously that intense.
Yeah. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. I think we got all the questions covered. This was a fantastic
thank
conversation,
you so much.
Amy.
Oh, well, hey, thank you. I've seriously enjoyed it.
This was super easy. You just kept going. Everything was very fascinating. There's a lot to chew on here with what you've gone through.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening, tuning in.
Yes, thank you, everybody that's peeked in and listened. I appreciate your presence.
And be sure to check out
to our audience
Amy's show and Aaron's show on. I'll put a link in the in the show notes. Also, this Saturday, we have a special show at 6 o'clock with Red Pill Junkie. And next...
Is that 6 o'clock my time?
Eastern time. It's 3 o'clock
Eastern,
your time.
so 5.
3.
3 mine. Okay.
And yeah,
I should know this.
grown up suck, Darcy. I agree. And next week we have Robert Stanley. That should be pretty interesting.
Oh, yay!
Yay! So anyway, thank you all for watching, listening, and take care. I'll see you next week or Saturday.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.